Welcome to another edition of the Game Preview Podcast presented by WynnBET. Betting is a team sport. Bet together at WynnBET. Ethan Greenberg, Cynthia Frelund, making it happen on a short week as the Jets travel to Indianapolis for Thursday Night Football against the Indianapolis Colts. And before we can start, Cynthia, before we even get to the coin toss, recording earlier in the week, the short week, is this, throwing off your module or your model and your number crunching? What is the... Take us behind the scenes for you trying to get prepared for this game.
Well, let's be honest. This week was a little weird in terms of all across the league. There were a number of starting quarterbacks that were not starting. So it's already been a little difficult, but your girl made it happen because there's always Thursday Night Football. So it's just when I get to do the Jets show and Thursday Night Football, it's just a little extra, but it's all good. It's all, we have it every week. So it's just more fun because I get to go a little deeper into this one.
All right, and now we're officially in November, but we'll get to Thanksgiving stuff in a little bit. We're in this kind of lull, where between Halloween and Thanksgiving, I'm here for it. It's peacoat weather. I'm all about it. Cynthia, heads or tails, as always. Are you feeling spicy and we're going heads, or we're just going with tails always?
I am as loyal as they come. We're going tails.
Okay, all right. That is exactly what I expected. And it is a tails. All right. Congratulations. You have won the coin toss, Cynthia. So you have the option. Would you like to talk about the Jets offense or the Colts offense first?
I want to talk about the Jets offense.
All right. Let's start where everyone wants to start. Let's talk about Mike White in the first quarter. I don't mean the first quarter of the game against the Bengals. I mean, in the first quarter of this podcast, we're kicking it off with Mike White. His performance against the Bengals, obviously, allowed him, or now he's the starter against the Colts. This Jets passing offense against the Colts passing defense, what do you expect from Mike White in his second start with the green and white?
I expect kind of something similar. Now, what you saw was he started 11 for 11. That has some amazing historical consequences, but also you saw short and quick passes that were super efficient. They were on all the different sides of the field. It wasn't just like one short and quick pass to the same person, although there was a lot of Michael Carter in that, but you saw a lot of diversity and you saw a lot of slot, like everything that favored the slot. Jamison Crowder, obviously very good in the slot. So I think you see more of the same. And I do think that you will see a little bit more of the deeper pass slung in to target some of the, they're missing pieces in their defensive backfield. So, to injury. So that could be an area that we see a little bit of a few more strategic deep passes.
So watching the game Sunday, Cynthia, it felt like the Bengals gave up a lot of the underneath stuff. That's also what Robert Saleh was saying, which allowed guys like Michael Carter, who we'll talk about, and Ty Johnson to basically eat up a lot of the checkdowns. Now, if the Colts decide to press up a little bit, first of all, do you expect them to do so? And second of all, going hand in hand with the deep shots, can you talk about the injuries that the Colts are dealing with right now in the secondary?
So first of all, the strength of the Colts defense, they've got a great pass rusher. Remember, Matt Eberflus is their defensive coordinator. You can look at his history, like from the Cowboys, et cetera, to see what kind of defenses he likes to put together. He's got a great pass rushing situation. They traded to, trade deadline week. So we can talk about how they got from the San Francisco 49ers DeForest Buckner, who's had a sack in like 4 games straight. The interesting part there, though, is the strength is, remember, usually it's their linebackers. Remember, a couple of years ago, we couldn't stop talking about Darius Leonard every single week. But then now you kind of have some interesting notes and flavors with some of their secondary. Like I don't like calling people out for being, not having their best game, but there are some ways to target some of their corners, especially the younger ones that are exploitable.
Cynthia, what did you make of this Jets receiving core last week against the Bengals, especially given that Corey Davis did not play? And as we record this, his status for Thursday is to be determined.
Why was that Keelan Cole touchdown not a touchdown? That was my favorite grab of like the entire season. So
I know. I digress.
And then this Braxton Berrios had an awesome touchdown as well, but like because we had that Keelan Cole touchdown in it burned into our brain. It was like, well, yeah, that was like really awesome, but the other one was like amazingly awesome. It was crazy. So look, what I thought they did really well was it was a team win. And although some stats look better than others, it was a complete team win. If you look, see, Mike White doesn't become 82.2% completion percentage effective if everyone isn't doing their job, if they're not running the correct routes, if they're not making their assignments in the O-line, if they're not, creating the space to run. I mean, Michael Carter, if you look at the runs that he had, and obviously you kind of fantasy managers who, maybe they played him right, they got a bajillion points from him, but he was super effective, 5.8 yards per rush against a light box, meaning they recognized when they had fewer defenders in the box, and he was able to run to the tune of 69 of his 77 yards came in that situation. So recognizing the different scenarios that they were in, that's really very cool to figure out, especially with change at quarterback, a lot of young players, a lot of people there's been a lot of injuries in and out. They haven't played this, consecutive snaps together like some of the other teams have. It was a really special team win. And I expect everyone to, sometimes that positive momentum creates more positive momentum, right? And doing your assignments and figuring out where you're supposed to go and actually doing it, being consistent, that's the best way to win.
All right, well, let's talk about this to wrap up the first quarter. One, were you surprised by the amount of pass attempts that Mike White threw? And two, do you think that the Jets will try to repeat that in Indianapolis, or do you think it'll be more of a balanced attack?
Okay, so I got some history for you. We're going to do a little history lesson here. And I wrote it down because we're taping this early, so I haven't had time to totally memorize it yet. But I'm more of a context person, not here's the stat. But this is pretty impressive. Okay. Mike White became the second quarterback since at least 1950 with 400 or more passing yards in his first career start. You know who the only other guy? This is since 1950. Not just Jets. This is 1950 for everywhere. You know who the only other guy was?
Is it Cam Newton?
It is. Yep. 422 yards. That was against Arizona in 2011. 405 passing yards, the most for Jets quarterback since Vinny Testaverde third for 482,000 against Baltimore. Ridiculous. He had 11 straight completions to start the game. That's the longest streak to start a game by a quarterback in his first career start. Not just Jets, in his first career start. Since 1978, you and I were both not even born. I don't even know, ridiculous, right? Anyways, so I think that those are worth saying because that's some good history right there.
That was a good history lesson. That was a good history
lesson. We do it all here. Math, history,
and
coin flips.
Also, coin flip, toss it in there. No pun intended. Coin flip. Anyway, so here's the thing, though. There is a saying, and this is how we'll end the first quarter. We don't need a rebuttal here. There is a saying, history repeats itself, and we will see what happens on Thursday night.
WynnBET is now live in New Jersey, and they're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting. Get in on all your favorite teams, players, and sports, from boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport. They have what you need to win. Sign up today to receive a special offer, risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. WynnBET, an official sportsbook and gaming partner of the New York Jets. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in New Jersey. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-270-7117.
All right, quarter number 2. Let's talk about this Jets rushing offense. You've been saying for weeks now about Michael Carter. You've been talking about him for a long time, right? The numbers on the left side against the Falcons were good, despite the overall team numbers, I would say, not as good. This past game, Michael Carter had his best performance as a pro, not only rushing the ball, but also talk about what he did in the check down and the short pass, which you also kind of consider a rush. What did you make of his performance, and how difficult is this matchup now against the Colts front, which you just talked about?
So if you look to see, Michael Carter had plus 15 rush yards over expected. So Next Gen Stats does these stats where it's when you do something over expected, it's like an average quarterback in these historical situations, in this down distance, score situation and time remaining, this is how many yards they got. Well, anything that's over 1 is really good. 15 is excellent. For a season, a guy like Derrick Henry will get 150. But remember, that's not in a single game. So that's a 10-game average would be 15, right? 15 times 10. So that's an interesting note. That's a really, really helpful thing. It also contextualizes the value of the O-line, meaning the O-line played really well in this one. So that's awesome. All of that is good. And if you think about all of the different ways that Michael Carter was useful, it's those check down passes. And I actually don't know if they're all, to be honest with you, giving yourself options isn't, sometimes people use the word check down in the pejorative. I think creating options that are high probability options, every quarterback in the league, from guys who've won MVP to not. That is the way that they all win, getting multiple people open so the defenders are confused. Now, when you look to see where this Colts defense has been susceptible, they can create, they don't play one type, like often the Patriots are known for, like, they only play man, right? Well, they don't play one type of defense. So throwing them off balance with the distribution between pass and rush is even more effective when you play a defense like this Matt Eberflus Colts. And I love Matt Eberflus. I just also like saying his name. So, it's because it's a fun one. But my point is, they're even more susceptible to it because they don't have the shut down corners like the Patriots typically have, just a Jets opponent that you're used to seeing, right? So if you create confusion and you create manageable downs and distances, it's all about staying effective on first and second down. If you do that, it's going to be hard for them to stop, because while I like this Colts defense, they're not like the Patriots with the man, and they're not like the quarterback beaters like you get with all the different looks from a Brian Flores defense last year. Remember when they were having all those interceptions?
All right, well, I got to talk about Matt Eberflus just because you said his name. Last week, it was Larry Ogunjobi and CJ Uzama. This week, it is Matt Eberflus. And, is there any other name that stands out to you on the all-name team?
Brian Gutekunst. Listen, the GM of the Packers, I spoke to him once and he was like, you do a bang up job of saying my name. I was like, listen, your girl, take that compliment.
Thank you.
You're
Very
like
nice.
Gutekunst. He sounds as though he were born of a cheese curd. So he really can't have any other job. Think about it. Brian Gutekunst doesn't work in Jacksonville. Brian Gutekunst doesn't work in Los Angeles. Brian Gutekunst only works in Minnesota, or Wisconsin. He could work in Minnesota too, but Wisconsin.
He could have, but they happen to be rivals now. But that's okay. You did a great job saying the name not once, but like 17 times. That was fantastic. One last thing on the Colts rushing defense and the Jets rushing offense. One, I think we got to give a little more love to Ty Johnson, because he really ran with some attitude this past weekend. While he didn't have the same numbers as Michael Carter, he was a big piece to why the Jets offense was so successful. And you mentioned Darius Leonard. Can you talk about that linebacker combo between Darius Leonard and Bobby? What is it? Okikere? It's close. It's got to be close.
You're good. Perfect. We can say whatever we want on this podcast. This is a Jets podcast, not a Colts podcast. We're fine.
Thank you.
As long as you say Foley right.
What do you think about them? The linebacker combo there.
So the thing about linebackers is now, like, we see these things, right? Like, there's coverage linebackers, and then there's linebackers who are kind of like normal. The way that the league is changing, given the fact that we see, one, more mobile quarterbacks, just kind of, there are very few true pocket passing quarterbacks left. Two, we've changed the way running backs operate. You used to call a pass catching back a scat back, and you can't even call them that. Now it's like a multi-purpose Swiss Army knife tool, blah, blah, blah. We have all these like more positive ways, but it's true because we're using short passes more often. Then you have, the evolution of like the safety linebacker, and then even corner position. It used to be a mean thing to call someone a slot corner. Now it's like you need a bang up slot corner, and you need it fast because there's great tight ends and running backs that do kind of this in the middle stuff. So clogging the middle of the field is a really big problem. Well, when you look to see what the Colts are good at, especially Darius Leonard, he can get sideline to sideline really, really quick. So what you need to do is basically create your short yardage, middle of the field stuff that tricks him, gets him out of the way. So he is very, very fast, and his point of attack is excellent. His burst from like where he's standing to like going towards a running back or going towards, dropping back in coverage, which is, it's a different, you're going in a different direction. Obviously, he's one of the every single year fastest. So he's going to be a problem. However, having multiple running backs like this creates a nice upside where if one doesn't work out or whatever's working to the outside doesn't, probably try something to the inside. I would just say play the hits and, again, go behind Elijah Vera Tucker for any of the running backs, and no matter what you're doing, right? So if you're going to run it, do that. If you're going to use short passes, I actually think your pass offense is really constructed well to take advantage of some of these short passes and create mismatches away from guys like Darius Leonard.
All right. I love it. And also, we had to throw out Elijah Vera Tucker in there. Brian Baldinger put out a breakdown on his Twitter account, and he called him Interstate 75, which goes hand in hand with what he called Mekhi Becton last year, Highway 77. So if we can get Highway 77 and Interstate 75 together at some point this season, which a lot of Jets fans are hoping for, that left side of the line is going to be fun to watch. Just putting that out there.
Absolutely.
So,
and you can't talk about Baldy without, I mean, his finger is, his fingers are just so epic. Like every time I work with him, I'm like, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again.
And you know what? This is going to be our halftime conversation. This is how we're going to kick it off. The second quarter's over. My favorite Brian Baldinger photo, now that we're in halftime, was, he does the Baldy's breakdowns when he's like on vacation. I actually think those are funny as all can
He's
be.
Great.
He tried to put up like one of these, right? Like, cause he was surfing and the finger was just, it was vertical. It was a vertical up, down. It was an impressive photo. I'll put it that way.
Oh yeah. No, Baldy is like, number one, he's like one of the nicest human beings on the planet. He's super funny. During the draft every year, we do a number of shows together. And inevitably at some point, like the camera will catch me being like just cause like it never gets old. Cause he's waving that finger out. I like Baldy's big boys are my favorite when he talks about O-linemen. Baldy's big boys.
Baldy's big boys. All right. Do you have anything else you want to throw out there at halftime right now, or are we just going to move on?
Well, I want to know, so how do you go to Indy a lot? Like, I mean, I spent some time there for the combine. Do you go to Indy a lot?
I've been for the combine, and I love the combine. The combine happens to be one of my favorite weeks of the entire calendar.
It's the best. It's the best reason to work in football for anyone. But my question is where is your Indy restaurant? Because like this is amongst football folks, there is really only one answer here, and whether it's cliche or not, there's only one answer.
Well, I feel like what you're getting at is St. Elmo, isn't it, or St. Elmo's, however you want to pronounce it, and it's fantastic. I will say that last time we went as a department here at the Jets, we had I don't want to say a bad experience, but we didn't have as good of an experience as the year before that. And last year, or 2019, right before the pandemic really hit, we went to Harry and Izzy's, which is the sister restaurant, for lunch, and we had a great time there. And I'm hoping to go back there for either lunch or dinner. And the Knicks play the Pacers Wednesday night. I mean, I feel like I got to go. So, but the answer is St. Elmo's.
Ooh, I like it.
It's the same for you?
I mean, look, it's just iconic because it's freezing and they have that good, like everyone talks about the shrimp cocktail with the very spicy, with the extra horseradish in it. But listen, I just really wanted to talk about the combine because it's incredible. It's like the best, like I said, it's the best weekend in all of Indy. Is like a randomly cool town for being in the middle, middle of nowhere. And they do a good job with their restaurants, and it's easy, very manageable.
They do. I will say, if you've been to Indy before, if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, I want to know what Kilroy's looks like out of the combine week. So I might have to make my way over there for a sports game or something. We'll see what happens, right? I'll let you know how that is.
Are you going to be able to go see the Knicks?
I'm hoping to.
Good.
I'm hoping. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
It'll be fun. That's fun. It's fun to see. It's a totally different stadium than anything you've got in New York. Like, I know it's MSG, but like it's totally different. You're going to be like, whoa, where's the rest of it?
Yes, I've been there. I went there once and it was great, but it's a little different with when your Knicks play in Indianapolis.
Get to MetLife Stadium this November and see your New York Jets host two big divisional matchups. On Sunday, November 14th at 1 p.m., the Jets square off against the Buffalo Bills. This game will also be the annual Salute to Service celebration. And then on Sunday, November 21st at 1 p.m., the Jets take on the Miami Dolphins, presented by ShopRite. Lock in your single game or group tickets today at nyjets.com/tickets.
So with that puts a bow on halftime. Let's move into the third quarter here. It's time to talk about Carson Wentz and this Colts passing offense against this Jets passing defense, which held Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase really much in check last week against the Bengals. What do you make of this matchup from a wide angle lens right now?
Okay, so let's start with Carson Wentz, just because that's like sort of the easier place to start here. Wentz is he doesn't throw a lot of touchdowns. He had 3 last week, and remember, he had a bunch of weird turnovers. Carson Wentz has been kind of two different people. He's been this guy that's been turnover prone. And then we saw him go through a historically for him long streak in not throwing any interceptions. And then last week at the end of that the Tennessee game, weirdness, like just weird stuff, not dissimilar from Joe Burrow's interception. That was, I guess it's Shaq Lawson's, but, interestingly enough, but it was a strange thing. So if you look to see, last year, remember, he led the league with interceptions with 15. The interesting part, first 3 quarters, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. This guy doesn't usually throw 3 touchdowns. It's like his first time he's done that in, I don't even know what, since week 15, 2019, right? So 2 years. And then the crazy pick 6 in the fourth quarter, very ill-advised, and he's got a great O-line. The story of this team is going to be Jonathan Taylor and the O-line, because Carson Wentz, while they've done a really good job with him, it's been crazy, and that's an area to exploit. If the O-line holds up and keeps, the Jets had 11 pressures last game, and they had really key pressures. 11 isn't like a super high number overall, considering the number of snaps that there were, but the key times when turnovers and when the pressure really mattered, like, you had the Shaq Lawson interception, obviously, and then you had, obviously Sheldon Rankins then sort of sealed the deal with that sack late in the fourth quarter. So the key pressures at key times are going to be the difference maker in this one. So when I look to see, where, and obviously the Jets did a really good job in the secondary. Jamar Chase had 0 deep receptions. Bryce Hall, congratulations. You had a really good game, like really good game plan. Obviously the 2 number 1 guys, CJ Uzomah and Jamar Chase, were held in check completely. Counting on Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, like they had not shown up all season long. That was a really smart game plan. So fronts and backs work together. And if they can keep working together like this, it's really going to be about, don't let the run game, especially Jonathan Taylor, get going too consistently, because that's an area where, like we saw Joe Mixon have 1 touchdown on the ground and 1 touchdown through the air. That's an area where Jonathan Taylor could be very useful.
And we're definitely going to talk about that in the fourth quarter. Let's talk about this Colts receiving core. They're going to be down T.Y. Hilton Thursday, but Michael Pittman seems like he's really emerged in his second season. They've also got Zach Pascal and then 2 tight ends and Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. The options there, right, for the Colts is do you like the options there? And would you say that Carson Wentz is reliant on one guy more than another, or it's really just relying on the guys in front of him and behind him, and then we'll see what he's got in terms of the outside weapons?
Well, if you missed that game, if you're a Jets fan and you missed the Titans-Colts game last week and you want to see like what their team's all about, go watch in the first quarter, like the first 5 minutes or whatever it is, and you see 2 touchdowns for Michael Pittman Jr. and 2 designed, that's the first 20 or 25 offensive plays are the scripted plays, right? And the scripted plays all went to Michael Pittman Jr. So it seems, and by the way, in the Colts game prior, Pittman had like 10 targets and caught all 10 of them. Like he's like very consistent for Carson Wentz. So clearly he's looking for Michael Pittman Jr. So stopping Michael Pittman Jr. down will really be a key to whether or not, what happens with this offense. Like he's completely looking for Pittman Jr. first.
WynnBET is now live in New Jersey, and they're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting. Get in on all your favorite teams, players, and sports, from boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport. They have what you need to win. Sign up today to receive a special offer, risk-free $500 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit WYNNBet.com to start winning. WynnBET, an official sportsbook and gaming partner of the New York Jets. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in New Jersey. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-270-7117.
All right, that wraps up the third quarter. Let's wrap up the game preview podcast presented by WynnBET with our fourth quarter, which is presented by Homefield IT. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor feels like he's a young bull because he runs hard. He gets a lot of carries. He's got a good offensive line in front of him. So what do we need to know if you're a Jets fan? What do you need to know about Jonathan Taylor heading into this matchup, and just how important is he to this Colts offense?
Okay, so he has 1 or more rushing touchdowns in 5 straight games. He had recorded 478 rush yards, 95.6 yards per game, and 6 rushing touchdowns over his last 5 games. It's a pretty big number, right? So where are those rushes coming and how do you shut them down? You have to first look where are the matchups that are good, because the Jets front is the strength of this team. So it's kind of like, it's not actually dissimilar to some of the strategy with the Bengals. Joe Mixon was super useful for the Bengals. Got it. But what are the Jets going to do to not give up, so many of the deep plays or so many of these big plays? It's okay to get chunk yardage as long as it's manageable. It's more of a bend, don't break, right? But it's a smarter strategy against Jonathan Taylor, who typically he's very useful outside. He's good inside though. They don't use him as much on inside runs, or they haven't as recently, even though they've got Quentin Nelson at left guard, who's ridiculous. Like, I don't know another word for that. He's really good. So, he's a ridiculous left guard. Like, want to see how left guards are supposed to play? Like that, he was worth a first round pick, and you almost never see such a high first round, top 5, even top 10 at a guard position. So, watch him. He makes a huge difference. Their O-line in general is really, really good. So want to watch all the diversity of their different runs and their looks. Motion is an interesting thing. It's going to be an interesting thing in this game because they don't use it as often as some of the other teams, but when they do, it's been pretty effective. So I'm interested to see how they'll craft this one to create, a lot of different looks to really try to, because it's kind of a good matchup for the Jets, meaning the Jets, the front is so much stronger, and stopping their run seems like something they can craft, because obviously Robert Saleh's really good at that. But then they're not so great in their passing game, or they have inconsistencies in their passing game. So if they can, slow the run down enough to force deeper throws and put Carson Wentz in these like weird situations where he just throws just watch the fourth quarter and you're like, what is this? First 3 quarters, really good. Fourth quarter, like, who is this person? It's like totally different. Like he was haunted. It was Halloween. He got haunted in the fourth quarter.
If you don't know the interception that Cynthia referred to, just go to YouTube, watch the Titans Colts highlights. It was a very peculiar play. That's all I'll say about that. And for the Jets rushing defense, Cynthia, last week, Joe Mixon held to 33 yards on 14 carries. That's an average of 2.4 yards per carry. And obviously, Joe Mixon means a lot to the Bengals. Jonathan Taylor means more to that offense, I think, than Joe Mixon does to the Cincinnati Bengals. So that is definitely the matchup to watch. If you're a Jets fan, the Jets defensive line against Jonathan Taylor and the Colts offensive line. That was the fourth quarter presented by Home Field IT, which means we have one last segment, the overtime segment, which also means that, Cynthia, the floor is yours for any final thoughts before the Jets kick off in Indianapolis Thursday night.
I just want to talk about how good of a team win. I can't get, I was so happy watching the Bengals game. It was so much fun because this was a true team win. Next Gen Stats does a prediction of the win percentage, right? So it got down to 4%. 4. That's not good. I just totally messed up the focus. Oh, there it is. We're back in focus. But it got down to, which means that Next Gen Stats said that in similar situations, 96% of the time, the Bengals would have won the game. And obviously it was in the fourth quarter. It was down. They were down by 11, 31-20. And then boom, Shaq Lawson, done. And then boom, a touchdown. And then boom, but the defense just totally, it was such a team win. And I love wins where the run game was awesome. The pass game was awesome. Again, that Keelan Cole, it counts for me. I mean, listen, if they wouldn't have won, then it would, but whatever, it counts for me. And Braxton Berrios, congratulations. That was great too, but that was the best catch I've seen all year. And then the defense, they held up. CJ Mosley allowed 34 yards in coverage. That's an awesome number. And then I don't know, just really fun to watch. And then Michael Carter, the other Michael Carter on the other side of the ball, really nice job as well. It was great to see how many people stepped up and they were happy.
It was a good time. It was a great time. It was a fantastic atmosphere.
Smiles, excitement. I love it. It was fun. And by the way, it's always good to knock off the guys number one. The Ravens fans should be writing notes, but other than that,
Oh yeah. Other than that, hey, it was Halloween. It was trick or treat. The Jets got a treat. That's all we're going to say. That's a perfect way to end this edition of the Game Preview Podcast presented by WynnBET. Betting is a team sport. Bet together at WynnBET. As always, Cynthia, thank you very much. And we will talk to you next week.